It is also confirmed in the Brahma Samhita that Lord Krishna is the ultimate cause of all causes. Text 20. Translation. There are some thinkers who believe that no one can ascertain the cause of distress by argumentation, nor know it by imagination, nor express it by words. O sage amongst kings, judge for yourself by thinking over all this with your own intelligence. Purport. The Vaishnavites, the devotees of the Lord, do believe, as above explained, that nothing can take place without the sanction of the Supreme Lord. He is the Supreme Director, for he confirms in the Bhagavad Gita 15:15 that he, as all-pervading Paramatma, stays in everyone's heart and keeps vigilance over all actions and witnesses all activities. The argument of the atheist that one cannot be punished for one's misdeeds unless proved before a qualified justice is refuted herein, for we accept the perpetual witness and the constant companion of the living being. A living being may forget all that he might have done in his past or present life, but one must know that in the same tree of the material body, the individual soul and the Supreme Soul as Paramatma are sitting like two birds. One of them, the living being, is enjoying the fruits of the tree, whereas the Supreme Being is there to witness the activities. Therefore, the Paramatma feature, the Supreme Soul, is actually the witness of all activities of the living being, and only by his direction can the living being remember or forget what he might have done in the past. He is, therefore, both all-pervading impersonal Brahman and the localized Paramatma in everyone's heart. He is the knower of all past, present, and future, and nothing can be concealed from him. The devotees know this truth, and therefore they discharge their duty sincerely, without being overly anxious for rewards. Besides that, one cannot estimate the Lord's reactions, either by speculation or by scholarship. Why does he put some into difficulty and not others? He is the supreme knower of the Vedic knowledge, and thus he is the factual Vedantist. At the same time, he is the compiler of the Vedanta. No one is independent of him, and everyone is engaged in his service in different ways. In the conditioned state, such services are rendered by the living being under force of material nature, whereas in the liberated state, the living being is helped by the spiritual nature in the voluntary loving service of the Lord. There is no incongruity or inebriety in his actions. All are on the path of absolute truth. Bhishma Dev correctly estimated the inconceivable actions of the Lord. The conclusion is, therefore, that the sufferings of the representative of religion and the representative of the earth, as present before Maharaj Pariksit, were planned to prove that Maharaj Pariksit was the ideal executive head because he knew well how to give protection to the cows, the earth, and the Brahmanas, religious principles, the two pillars of spiritual advancement. Everyone is under full control of the Lord. He is quite correct in his action when he desires something to be done by someone, irrespective of the consideration of a particular case. Maharaj Pariksit was thus put to the test for his greatness. Now let us see how he solves it by his sagacious mind. So there's several important points, very important points here, is that, so not only do the Vedic literatures state that there is a soul within the body, a spiritual particle, a spiritual atomic particle that animates the body, but actually there are two souls within the body, one of the individual living entity and a partial representation of the Supreme Lord as Paramatma. So within every heart, there are two souls within the body. So this is quite a revelation compared to a lot of modern philosophy that just to get to them to admit that there's even one soul within the body is like, trying to pull teeth. So here in the Vedic literature it is stated that there are actually two souls within the body, the enjoyer and the witness. Also, it states that the two pillars of spiritual knowledge and spiritual righteousness and spiritual rectification are the cows and the Brahmanas. So again, we come back to the point that cow protection is not merely some kind of religious sentiment or materialistic sentiment. It's actually a means to give human society the greatest benefit. So the slaughter of the cow and the slaughter of the bull and the slaughter of all animals is actually a degrading factor in human society that cannot be underestimated. Text 21. Sutta Goswami said, O best among the Brahmanas. Now Sutta Goswami is narrating this whole scene for the sages at Namacharan. So this is Sutta Goswami is coming in, is that he is narrating this, what happened between Maharaj Pariksit, Kali, the cow and bull. Suta Goswami said, O best among the Brahmanas, the Emperor Parikshit, thus hearing the personality of religion speak, was fully satisfied, and without mistake or regret, he gave his reply. Purport. The statement of the bull, the personality of religion, was full of philosophy and knowledge, and the king was satisfied, since he could understand that the suffering bull was not an ordinary one. Unless one is perfectly conversant with the law of the Supreme Lord, one cannot speak such things touching philosophical truths. The emperor, being also on an equal level of sagacity, replied to the point without doubts or mistakes. Text 22. Translation. The king said, O you who are in the form of a bull, you know the truth of religion, and you are speaking according to the principle that the destination intended for the perpetrator of irreligious acts is also intended for one who identifies the perpetrator. You are no other than the personality of religion. Purport. A devotee's conclusion is that no one is directly responsible for being a benefactor or mischief monger without the sanction of the Lord. Therefore, he does not consider anyone to be directly responsible for such action. But in both the cases, he takes it for granted that either benefit or loss is God sent, and thus it is his grace. In the case of benefit, no one will deny that it is God sent, but in the case of loss or reverses, one becomes doubtful about how the Lord could be so unkind to his devotees as to put him into great difficulty. Jesus Christ was seemingly put into such great difficulty, being crucified by the ignorant, but he was never angry at the mischief mongers. That is the way of accepting a thing, either favorable or unfavorable. Thus, for a devotee, the identifier is equally a sinner, like the mischief monger. By God's grace, the devotee tolerates all reverses. Maharaj Parikshit observed this, and therefore he could understand that the bull was no other than the personality of religion himself. In other words, a devotee has no suffering at all, because so-called suffering is also God's grace for a devotee who sees God in everything. The cow and bull never placed any complaint before the king for being tortured by the personality of Kali, although everyone lodges such complaints before the state authorities. The extraordinary behavior of the bull made the king conclude that the bull was certainly the personality of religion, for no one else could understand the finer intricacies of the codes of religion. So, we should note here that the behavior of the cow and the representation of the personality of Mother Earth, and the bull, the representation of the personality of Dharma, that their activities were extraordinary behavior. So these things are not to be imitated. In other words, if you're feeling some pinching of the material nature, it's not beyond the realm that you may complain or lodge some complaint. But rather, we should understand that the great behavior of the personality of Mother Earth and the personality of Dharma, and how extraordinary they are, and that how we can learn from them. But it doesn't mean that we never could complain or to try to put ourselves into some position that we're not ready for. So just keep that in mind. Text 23. Thus it is concluded that the Lord's energies are inconceivable. No one can estimate them by mental speculation or word jugglery. Purport. A question may be raised as to why a devotee should refrain from identifying an actor, although he knows definitely that the Lord is the ultimate doer of everything. Knowing the ultimate doer, one should not pose himself as ignorant of the actual performer. To answer this doubt, the reply is that the Lord is also not directly responsible, for everything is done by his deputed Maya Shakti, or material energy. The material energy is always provoking doubts about the supreme authority of the Lord. The personality of religion knew perfectly well that nothing can take place without the sanction of the Supreme Lord, and still he was put into doubts by the deluding energy, and thus he refrained from mentioning the supreme cause. This doubtfulness was due to the contamination of both Kali and the material energy. The whole atmosphere of the age of Kali is magnified by the deluding energy, and the proportion of measurement is inexplicable. Text 24. Translation. In the age of Satya, truthfulness, your four legs were established by the four principles of austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. But it appears that three of your legs are broken due to rampant irreligion in the form of pride, lust for women, and intoxication. Purport. The deluding energy, or material nature, can act upon the living beings proportionately in terms of the living beings falling prey to the deluding attraction of Maya, or illusion. Moths are captivated by the glaring brightness of light, and thus they become prey to the fire. Similarly, the deluding energy is always captivating the conditioned souls to become prey to the fire of delusion. And the Vedic scriptures warn the conditioned souls not to become prey to delusion, but to get rid of it. The Vedas warn us to go not to the darkness of ignorance, but to the progressive path of light. The Lord himself also warns the deluding power of the material energy is too powerful to overcome. But one who completely surrenders unto the Lord can easily do so. But to surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord is also not very easy. Such surrender is possible by persons of austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. These four principles of advanced civilization were remarkable features in the age of Satya. In that age, every human being was practically a qualified Brahmana of the highest order, and in the social orders of life, they were all Paramahamsas, or the topmost in the renounced order. By cultural standing, the human beings were not at all subjected to the deluding energy. Such strong men of character were competent enough to get away from the clutches of Maya, or illusion. But gradually, as the basic principles of Brahminical culture, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, became curtailed by proportionate development of pride, attachment for women, and intoxication, the path of salvation, or the path of transcendental bliss, retreated far, far away from human society. With the progression of the age of Kali, people are becoming very proud and attached to women and intoxication. By the influence of the age of Kali, even a pauper is proud of his penny. The women are always dressed in an overly attractive fashion to victimize the minds of men, and the man is addicted to drinking wine, smoking, drinking tea, and chewing tobacco, etc. All these habits, or so-called advancement of civilization, are the root causes of all irreligiousness, and therefore it is not possible to check corruption, bribery, and nepotism. Man cannot check all these evils simply by statutory acts and police vigilance, but he can cure the disease of the mind by proper medicine, namely advocating the principles of Brahminical culture, or the principles of austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. Modern civilization and economic development are creating a new situation of poverty and scarcity with the result of blackmailing the consumers' commodities. The leaders and the rich men of the society spend 50% of their accumulated wealth mercifully for the misled mass of people and educate them in God consciousness, the knowledge of Bhagavatam. Certainly the age of Kali will be defeated in its attempt to entrap the conditioned souls. We must always remember that false pride, or too high an estimation of one's own values of life, undue attachment to women or association with them, and intoxication will divert human civilization from the path of peace, however much the people clamor for peace in the world. The preaching of the Bhagavatam principles will automatically render all men austere, clean both inside and outside, merciful to the suffering, and truthful in daily behavior. That is the way of correcting the flaws of human society, which are very prominently exhibited at the present moment. So I don't have much time left remaining in the show. I would like to thank everyone. I'd like to thank everyone for listening today, and I hope that you found some peace of mind and some knowledge that you can use in your personal life and to understand the situation of the world that we find around us. So please join me next Saturday at noon. We'll start with text 25, and we'll continue to talk about the Bhagavatam and how it relates to human history and to our current modern society. So everyone, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next Saturday. Don't forget to check out the Protect the Cow weblog as well, protectacow.typepad.com. Okay, see you next time.
Hare